Welcome to our Petal Cake tutorial. We first designed this cake back in 2011. It was created after our begonia cupcakes were so popular, and now we've turned it into a cake. What you're going to need is a thick crumb coat on we've used a vanilla cake here, anything nice and light and fluffy to go with your buttercream. We also have a disposable piping bag so that when we're done we can throw that away. I have a cupola as well as a 104 piping tip that we can use, some scissors. I've also got with me a laminating sheet. That's to help us do a bit of a practice run to make sure that we're getting our technique right before we put it onto our cake. We've also got a spatula. You can use a spatula or a ruler to score the cake so that you know that you're keeping level. And we have some crusting buttercream. This is also really great with cream cheese and the non-crusting buttercreams as well. So what we're going to do first is mark out the cake in a few sections just so that we know that as we go around the cake we're constantly checking that we're level. So what I'm going to do is place this up against the cake and just give a light press. Just in a few sections. It just helps you to stay on track. There we go. So now we know what straight is. We're going to fill our piping bag. The first thing we're going to do is unscrew our cupola. These are not crucial, you don't have to have one, but it does help you to not burst your bag as you pipe, and it means that you can clean your tip if you need to in between. So we're going to insert the first part of the cupola as far into the piping bag as we can. Then we're going to release it, drop it down a bit. We know how high it goes up. Cut that excess away and then push this up as far as it will go. Place our 104 piping tip on and then we're going to fill our bag. There, push it all down. Make sure it's going. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is cover how you hold your piping bag. The most common way is to pinch it, rotate it a couple of times, and you're ready to go. Some people curve this over if that feels more comfortable. The other option that I'm going to be using today is to actually flatten out your piping bag, wrap it around your index finger, up and through. Now when we're doing our petals, we want to make sure that we always have the large part of our teardrop shape at the base. So if we're holding it up nice and high, you can see that the wider bit is at the bottom and the smaller bit is at the top. So we're going to do a bit of a practice run before we get onto our cake so that we know the action and the movement that we're doing. So I have a laminating sheet, that way I can just wipe it off and clean it up later. What we're going to do is place your hand down on a slight angle. You don't want to be up directly above your piping. You just want to be over to the side and you have the large end of your teardrop shape touching the surface. Then we're going to kick it out to the side and back around, and you're basically creating what looks like a little teardrop. I'm going to turn that around to see, and basically that's the shape that we're going to be creating. And we're just going to layer them, working from the bottom. Even though the cake itself, it looks as though it's working from the top down, we're actually tucking behind each time. So we're coming behind, squeezing with a little bit of pressure, up and then back down. Up and back down. And it's really like waves of the ocean. You can feel your hand moving in this sort of direction, going up and around. We've got a row done. I'll spin that around and we can see that even though it looks like it's working from the top down, it's actually tucking underneath. Now our next row, we want to hide all those fuzzies that we have on our edge. So we're going to start only over by about ½ an inch or so, or about 1 centimetre, so that your next row overlaps the beginning of your first. I try to keep them lined up so that you have the exact same amount of petals in every single row. That's also really important if you want to create an ombre effect where you're slowly going from darker up to lighter, because then you know that you can do a certain section in one colour and then fade it out as you work up. I'm going to come up to the side of the cake, resting along the bottom. Make sure that the big end is touching the surface. Squeeze up and around, tucking behind as you go. And make sure that your last one actually goes over the top of your cake. That way you won't be left with a bit that's missing right along the edge. We want to hide the edge and then we'll spread the top out to meet. So now we're going to come along and do another row. We're going to squeeze, going up and down, trying to keep them lined up with the one next to it, and making sure that your piping tip isn't pressed too hard against the side of the cake. If it's too far against the side, it means that it won't protrude and then you won't be able to tuck behind. And you can see how we're nearing the end here. We have our line so that we can see that we're staying straight. It looks as though we only have around 2 more to go and then we'll be all done. Now our final one, we aren't going to be able to get this to overlap. So there is going to be an actual back seam on the cake in that there is going to be one layer that doesn't ruffle over the previous. But for most people you can't even see it all. But we know that that's our back. So I'm going to place this to here and we're going to work on the top. Now the top we want to look like a flourishing flower. I've got one here that we've already done, and you can see that on top it's got a beautiful array of hundreds of petals. So now we're going to start by just going up and down, working our way around the cake. We're going to do an entire row. Don't be tempted to do a bunch at a time and get that movement. It's not the same as the ruffle cake on top. You want each individual petal to be noticed and to be completely on its own. This is one of those times when it's really handy to have a turntable so you can keep spinning. Just up and down movements. You can see there's not much turn of the wrist, but it's just a little wave motion. So now we have our first layer completely done and it's reasonably flat. And the reason why we've done that is that we want it to join up with the seam here from the sides coming up and the top going over. Make sure that your piping tip is remaining nice and clean. Secure your piping bag. Doesn't matter where you started or where you stopped because you're stopping after each one. So there is no beginning and no end. I like to overlay them so that they're not completely lined up. So start your first one on the seam mark just to space it out a little bit. So you can see that we're getting a lot closer now. And you'll also start to notice that I'm bringing my piping tip back and it's becoming more upright as I go. And that's just so that the petals sit up in the middle. Constantly check your bag, make sure it's comfortable, make sure you don't have any fuzzies. We're going to do one more row and then we're going to do a quick lift one in the middle. So do your last row and just concentrate on where they are. Going around, and then our final one, we're left with a little spot in the center. So all we're going to do is go straight up and straight down. Try and keep it as small as you can. Find a nice angle to fill it, and nice and up and down, and that's it. So now we can have a look and we can see that we've done all of our side, we've done our top, and it's ready to enjoy. It's a beautiful petal cake and I hope you enjoy making it.